I squeezed Ethan's small hand, the contact grounding me. "Ready, buddy?" He nodded, his 8-year-old face set with a seriousness that always broke my heart a little. He'd straightened his own clip-on tie in the car, checking it in the rearview mirror until it was perfectly centered. We stepped through the towering glass doors of the Chestnut Hill Grove. The air inside was heavy with the rich scent of seared steak and old money. It clung to us instantly, a perfume I couldn't afford. A hostess, all posture and polite indifference, greeted us. Her smile only warmed when she spotted Ethan. "Good evening, Ms. Morgan. Your family is already seated." My stomach did a familiar flip. $600. That's what this corner table cost me. A $600 deposit drained from the account meant for our mortgage, just to secure this one night. My salary from the marketing firm was a thin wire I walked every month, balancing Ethan's school fees against the bills that never stopped coming. But this was for my parents. 45th anniversary. It had to be perfect. The hostess led us through the cavern of amber light and polished dark wood. A piano player in the corner was tracing a melody I didn't recognize, the sound weaving between the intimate murmurs of other diners. I kept my chin up, my steps measured, Ethan's hand held tight in mine. I taught him that when you feel small, you stand tall. I spotted them in the largest booth in the back. My younger sister, Bianca, was a cascade of perfect blonde highlights, her head bent toward her phone. The designer dress she wore probably cost more than my car payment. Her husband, David, sat beside her, looking bored as he thumbed through his own device. Their 2 boys were squirming, jabbing at a tablet propped between them. My father, Frederick, sat at the head of the table like a king, and my mother, Eleanor, was beside him, both of them beaming. They were cooing at Bianca's sons. Laid out on the white tablecloth were 2 large, brightly wrapped gifts. One for each of Bianca's boys. Nothing else. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. "We're here," I announced, forcing a warmth into my voice that I didn't feel. My mother glanced up, her smile faltering for a split second. "Oh, Amelia, there you are." Not one person looked at Ethan, not my father, not my sister, not my mother. It was as if he were invisible, a shadow I had dragged in with me. "Happy anniversary," I said, leaning down to kiss my mother's cheek. It felt cool and dry. 45 years. That's incredible. My father just gave a stiff nod as I kissed his cheek. "Thank you for organizing this." His eyes had already dismissed me and returned to Bianca's oldest son. "Hey, sis," Bianca muttered, not looking up from her screen. I settled Ethan into the empty chair beside me. I watched him meticulously unfold his linen napkin and spread it over his lap, just as I'd taught him. His dark eyes darted around the table, taking in the scene. He saw the gifts. He saw the way no one had spoken his name. He was a child, but he wasn't stupid. He saw it all. "Ethan picked out cards for both of you," I said, giving his shoulder a gentle nudge. He reached into his small suit pocket and produced 2 handmade cards. He'd spent an hour on them, the crayon drawings of flowers and stick figure grandparents meticulously shaded. "Happy anniversary, Grandma and Grandpa." My mother took them with a distracted smile. "That's nice, dear." She didn't open them. She didn't even glance at the drawings. The cards vanished into her expensive purse. The memory of her voice, sharp and final, sliced through me. "Amelia, be reasonable. Your sister needs this more." I'd heard it my whole life. When Bianca needed the new winter coat more than I needed boots that didn't leak. When Bianca deserved my portion of dessert because she'd had a hard day. When Bianca required the money I'd saved for a college textbook because her car needed a non-essential repair. It was a pattern I had never been strong enough to break. Even now, raising Ethan on my own after his father decided fatherhood was optional, I still sent Bianca money. I still answered her frantic calls. I still showed up, hoping this time would be different. I still wanted, just once, for my son to feel like he belonged to this family. A waiter appeared, all crisp uniform and quiet professionalism, holding leather-bound menus. I watched Ethan's eyes go wide at the sheer size of them. His finger traced the elegant script, his lips moving silently as he sounded out the words. He paused at the shrimp pasta, his absolute favorite, the one we only made for birthdays. "Would anyone care for appetizers?" the waiter asked. Bianca's boys yelled, "Fries!" and "shrimp cocktail." My father nodded at them, a broad smile on his face. Good to see these boys have healthy appetites. The waiter's gaze fell on Ethan, his pen poised. Ethan, bless his heart, looked up at my father first, that instinctive childish deference to the man at the head of the table. Then he looked back at his menu. "Could I have the shrimp pasta, please?" Ethan asked. His voice was small, barely audible over the piano. The waiter looked at my father for confirmation. Frederick continued to study his own menu as if no one had spoken. The silence stretched. It was a heavy, awful thing. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Then, Bianca smirked. She finally looked up from her phone, her eyes cold. "We didn't order for him." My breath hitched. The world went silent. Before I could find my voice, before I could even process the cruelty of that statement, my father added his own blow. He didn't even look at his grandson. He just stared at the menu. "You should have packed him something." The table went dead quiet. Even Bianca's boys stopped squirming. Ethan shrank. I watched it happen in real time. His small shoulders curved inward, his eyes dropped to the empty plate in front of him, and he tried to make himself disappear. Something inside me didn't just crack. It shattered. It pulverized. 5 years. 5 years of raising this gentle, funny, brilliant boy by myself. 5 years of dragging him to family holidays where he was treated like a piece of furniture. 5 years of biting my tongue, of sending money I didn't have, of absorbing the casual cruelty, all in the desperate hope that they would one day love him, that they would one day see him. And now, at a dinner I paid for, at a table I reserved, they had told my son he should have brought a sandwich. My face was a mask. I felt the blood drain from it, leaving my skin cold and tight. I processed what my father had just said. "You should have packed him something." The waiter was shifting, his professional calm cracking. He could feel the tension rolling off our table. "Perhaps I should come back in a few minutes?" "No." My voice was unnervingly calm. It didn't even tremble. "That won't be necessary." I stood up slowly. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping softly on the wood floor. I straightened to my full height, looking down at the waiter, who met my eyes with a look of pained sympathy. "Please cancel any pending orders for this table," I said, my voice clear and carrying in the quiet restaurant. "Amelia," my mother started, alarm finally cutting through her indifference. "What are you doing?" "Bill the entire $600 deposit and any other charges to my father." I kept my gaze locked on the waiter. "It's his celebration, after all. He can handle it." "Now wait just a minute." Frederick's voice boomed, his face turning a blotchy red. "You can't just—" "I can." I reached for Ethan's hand. He looked up at me, his eyes wide, the hurt being replaced by a dawning shock. This was the first time in his life he had ever seen me do anything but fold. This was the first time I had ever truly, fully chosen him over them. "No," I said again to my father. "I don't think I will. I'm done." Bianca's mouth was hanging open, her phone forgotten in her hand. "You're being so dramatic, Amelia. It was just a misunderstanding." "Was it?" I asked her, and she actually flinched. I didn't wait for an answer. I guided Ethan from his chair. I held his hand and we walked. We walked away from the table. We walked past the other diners who were now openly staring. We walked through the beautiful, expensive restaurant where I had hoped my son might, for one night, feel like he mattered. He squeezed my hand as we pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the cool night air. The valet rushed forward, but I waved him off. "Are you mad, Mom?" Ethan's voice was a small whisper. I knelt in front of him on the sidewalk, right there on the pavement. I cupped his face in my hands. Not at you, never, ever at you, Ethan. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, hot and angry. I'm only mad at myself, I whispered, wiping it away, mad for how long it took me to see what was right in front of me all along. It was 3 a.m. My phone had buzzed for the 13th, 14th, 15th time. I'd stopped counting. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. The notifications lit up the dark kitchen, where I sat alone at my small table. Bank statements were spread out in front of me like a losing hand of poker. Each text message that lit up my phone was a new, desperate accusation. From Frederick. You humiliated us. After everything we've done for you, you walk out and stick me with a bill. You are ungrateful. From Eleanor. How could you do this to your father on his special night? Bianca is distraught. You've embarrassed this entire family. From Bianca. So typical, Amelia. Always the victim. It was just dinner. You're overreacting and you cost Dad a fortune. You better fix this. I sipped my cold coffee and pulled another statement from the pile. The truth was right here, in black and white. My finger traced the line items, one by one, as if touching a series of fresh bruises. There it was. Transaction, $900. Recipient, Bianca Morgan. Dated the 1st of the month, and again the month before that, and the month before that, 8 months in a row. She'd called me sobbing the first time. Emergency car repairs, she'd claimed. The next month, it was unexpected medical bills for one of her boys. Then school supplies that somehow cost just under $1,000, half her rent. That's what I was paying. Half her rent while I was clipping coupons to buy Ethan new shoes. The money never came back, not a dime, not even a thank you. I pulled another folder, printouts of old loan agreements I'd stupidly made her sign. $3,000 for a down payment on a car she didn't need. $2,000 more for a business idea that vanished a week later. 4 years of my life, cataloged in financial transfusions to a sister who, just hours ago, refused to let my son eat. I closed my eyes, the numbers burning behind my lids. $7,200 in rent this year alone. Over $5,000 in loans I'd never see again, not to mention the free babysitting, the endless emotional support, the hours I'd spent listening to her complain about her perfect life. My phone buzzed again, a new text from Bianca. Mom is crying. I hope you're happy. I looked up. Ethan's school photo was stuck to the refrigerator with a cheap magnet, his cautious smile, his serious eyes taking everything in. Just like at the restaurant. I picked up the phone, held my thumb over Bianca's name, and pressed block. Then I did the same for Frederick and for Eleanor. I silenced the phone and went back to my audit. I had work to do. 3 days of blessed, absolute quiet. No texts, no calls. The silence was so profound it felt like a physical presence in the house, a balm. I was in the kitchen chopping carrots for Ethan's lunchbox when a hard, entitled knock echoed through the front door. It wasn't a friendly knock, it was a summons. I peered through the peephole. My stomach dropped, all 3 of them. Frederick stood front and center, his shoulders squared in a golf polo, looking like he was about to fire a caddy. Eleanor hovered just behind him, her arms crossed, her face a mask of disappointment, and Bianca shifting her weight from one designer heel to the other, already chewing her lip in what I now recognized as fabricated distress. Their car was in my driveway, blocking me in. There was no pretending I wasn't home. "Coming," I called out, my voice flat. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, took one deep breath, and opened the door. Frederick pushed past me. He didn't wait for an invitation, just walked straight into my modest living room as if he owned it. The entire space seemed to shrink with their presence. "We need to talk," he announced, planting himself in the middle of my rug. "Ethan's at school," I said, closing the door quietly behind them. Thank God for that. "About what?" I asked, crossing my arms. Frederick's nostrils flared. "About what? About that disaster at the restaurant, that fiasco. You embarrassed this entire family. Bianca's eyes immediately welled up with practiced tears. People are talking, Amelia. Our friends, people from the club. They saw you walk out. David is mortified. You've ruined Dad's reputation. Frederick slapped a folded piece of paper onto my coffee table. It wasn't a bill from the restaurant, it was a typed invoice from him for $200. What is this? That, Frederick said, is what you owe us. $600 for the deposit you forfeited and another $600 for the emotional distress and public humiliation you caused. Double your original deposit. A fair price. I stared at the number. $200. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice dripping with that familiar, honey-sweet poison. Be reasonable, Amelia. You made a scene. This is just you taking responsibility. Pay up and we can start to put this behind us. And if I don't? Her eyes went cold. Then we'll be forced to tell everyone. The whole family. What an ungrateful, unstable daughter you've become. How you've turned your back on us. The threat hung in the air. The old, familiar urge to cave rose in my throat. Just write the check. Make them leave. Buy a few more weeks of their conditional, toxic peace. Instead, I looked at the invoice, then at my father's red face, at my sister's fake tears, at my mother's cold eyes. Excuse me for a moment, I said, my voice perfectly steady. I need to make a phone call. I stepped into the kitchen, just out of their line of sight, but close enough to hear them muttering. She's finally seeing sense, Frederick grunted. My hands were steadier than I ever could have imagined. I pulled up my contacts and pressed the name. It rang twice. Clara? It's Amelia. Amelia, honey, are you okay? Aunt Clara's voice was warm, no nonsense, a stark contrast to the vipers in my living room. I am, I said, keeping my voice low. But I have a situation. Frederick, Eleanor, and Bianca are at my house. They're demanding money and making threats. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Robert is right here. We're in the car. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't you say another word to them until we arrive. Don't agree to anything. Just wait. We're coming. Thank you, I whispered and hung up. I walked back into the living room. The three of them looked up expectantly, as if waiting for me to emerge with my checkbook. I've made a call, I said. Some other family members are on their way. I think it's best if we all discuss this together. The mood shifted instantly. Who? Eleanor demanded. What family? Aunt Clara and Uncle Robert, I said. Frederick's face darkened. He'd always resented Uncle Robert, a quiet, self-made man who had never needed anything from anyone. Bianca's false tears vanished, replaced by a sullen pout. Why did you call them? This is a private family matter. They're family, I said, and this is a family matter, so we'll wait. We sat in the most hostile, frosty silence I have ever experienced. For 20 minutes, no one spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on my wall. Finally, the doorbell rang. I opened it, and the relief that washed over me was so strong, my knees almost buckled. Uncle Robert, all 6'4" of quiet dignity, stepped in first. He didn't just fill the doorway. He seemed to fill the whole room, his calm, steady presence sucking the oxygen out of Frederick's rage. Aunt Clara followed, her eyes sharp, taking in the scene in a single sweeping glance. My parents on the sofa, Bianca by the window, and the invoice on my coffee table. She missed nothing. Frederick, Eleanor, Bianca, Robert said, his voice a low, calm rumble that held more authority than my father's loudest bellow. What's this about? Bianca immediately launched into her performance. The tears returned, her voice trembling. Oh, Uncle Robert, it's awful. Amelia abandoned us at Dad's 45th anniversary dinner. She just stood up and walked out, humiliated him, and now she won't take responsibility for what she did. That's not what happened, I said. My voice was so steady it surprised even me. All eyes turned to me. I didn't abandon anyone. You refused to feed my son. At a dinner I paid for." Frederick shot up from the sofa, his finger jabbing in my direction. "You listen here, young lady. You will not disrespect your mother and me in your own home." "Back off, Frederick." Robert didn't raise his voice. He didn't move, but he'd somehow placed himself between me and my father. Frederick stopped mid-stride, his mouth hanging open. He physically deflated, sinking back to the sofa cushion. Aunt Clara perched on the arm of my armchair, looking at my mother. "I've watched this pattern for 30 years, Eleanor. You've always favored Bianca. You've always expected Amelia to be the designated sacrifice, the one who pays and apologizes and smooths everything over. When does it end? That's ridiculous. We love both our daughters equally." Eleanor sputtered, her hand fluttering to her pearls. "Is it?" I walked to the dining table where my folder of bank statements was sitting. I brought it back and placed it on the coffee table next to their absurd invoice. "Is it, Mom? Because I've been paying half of Bianca's rent for the last 8 months. Bianca's face went white. "What?" Clara asked, her eyes narrowing. $900 a month. For 8 months. That's $7,200. She told me it was for car repairs and medical bills." I flipped open the folder, but the transfers are all labeled monthly help. And then there's this. I pulled out the printouts. $5,000 in emergency loans from the last 3 years, never repaid, never even acknowledged. Not to mention the free childcare so she and David can take weekend trips. Not to mention the endless one-sided emotional support. My voice wasn't shaking. It was gaining strength with every word, every number. This ends today. Right now. Aunt Clara nodded slowly, a grim satisfaction on her face. "When's the last time any of you helped Amelia? When she was divorcing that worthless husband? When Ethan had pneumonia last winter and she was alone in the ER for 2 days? When her car broke down in July and she had to take the bus for 2 weeks to save for the repair? Anyone?" The silence in the room was a confession. Frederick was staring at the floor. Eleanor was intensely examining her manicure. Bianca was swallowing hard, her eyes darting to her mother for a rescue that wasn't coming. "That's what I thought," Clara said. I walked to my purse, took out my wallet, and removed 6 crisp $100 bills. Money I had earmarked for our electric bill and groceries. Money I couldn't really spare, but I knew, with absolute certainty, I needed to spend this for my own sanity. I slid the bills across the coffee table, stopping them right next to Frederick's invoice. "Here is $600, I said. "That is the exact amount of my original deposit. The deposit I paid, I am forfeiting it. That is what I am responsible for. That is fair." "Ha!" Frederick's hand shot out and snatched the cash. "Now, about the rest of the bill and your apology—" "The rest of the bill is yours," I interrupted, "and I am not apologizing. Furthermore, the rent payments to Bianca have stopped, permanently." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my voice was level. "I have documented every transfer, every text message begging for money, every single promise to pay me back. If anyone wants to talk about who is ungrateful or who owes who, I have the receipts. I am happy to share them." Bianca's false tears dried up instantly. Pure, unfiltered panic replaced them. You can't do that. I have bills. I'm counting on that money." "So am I," I said, gathering my statements and sliding them back into their folder. "I'm counting on it to raise my son. We're finished here." "You can't just kick us out," Frederick sputtered, his face flushing a dangerous shade of crimson. "I am still your father." "I believe my niece has asked you to leave," Aunt Clara said, standing to her full height. Uncle Robert, who had been standing silently by the door, moved and opened it wide. It was a silent, unarguable command. They filed out one by one, defeated. Frederick first, brushing past Robert without making eye contact. Eleanor next, her face a mask of fury. Bianca was last. She paused at the doorway, her eyes narrowing into slits, and hissed, "You will regret this." Robert's presence beside her was enough to urge her forward onto the porch. I closed the door behind them. The click of the deadbolt was the loudest, most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The house felt suddenly larger. The air felt cleaner, easier to breathe. Uncle Robert squeezed my shoulder once. "You did the right thing, Amelia. Stay strong. Call me tomorrow," Clara said, pulling me into a fierce hug. "Or tonight. Anytime." They slipped away, leaving me alone in my blessedly quiet home. The moment their car pulled away, I slid down against the door until I was sitting on the floor. My hands, which had been so steady, were now trembling violently. Tears I refused to let them see burned behind my eyes. But I held them back. Ethan would be home from school soon. He didn't need to see me cry. Not today. Today, for the first time in my 35 years, I had chosen myself, and I had won. The victory was short-lived. The counterattack began 2 days later, not with a knock, but with a notification. I was checking my phone for the 10th time that morning, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Bianca's Facebook status glowed from the screen. It's so sad when people forget where they came from. Some people think a little money makes them better than the family who raised them. Heartbroken. 27 likes. 5 comments from distant relatives and my mother's friends, all variations of, "Oh no, what happened?" and "sending prayers." My mother's own comment was right below it, a simple, devastating endorsement. Some people just forget what family means. We did our best. The vagueness was a precision weapon, just enough information to signal a crisis, but no context. Just enough to paint me as a cold, money-grubbing monster who had attacked her loving parents. Just enough to make me the villain. My phone rang. Cousin Bella, the third family member to call that day. I stared at her name, my thumb hovering over the answer button. The old Amelia would have snatched it up, desperate to explain, to plead my case, to make her understand. The new Amelia sent the call to voicemail. I added her to the growing list of numbers I was screening. The quiet satisfaction of setting that small boundary surprised me. I opened the notepad on my kitchen counter. I wrote down the date, the time, and a direct transcription of Bianca's and Eleanor's posts. I took screenshots. My new fortress, built one fact at a time. A text came in from Jessica, a woman from my marketing team. "Coffee before work tomorrow? You've seemed a million miles away. Talk if you need to." I typed back, "Yes, that would be great." Before I could overthink it, Sunday morning brought church. I'd kept going for Ethan's sake, wanting him to have some sense of community, even if my own faith was hanging by a thread. We slipped into our usual pew, and I immediately felt the shift, the weight of stares. Mrs. Rollins, one of my mother's oldest friends, leaned toward her husband, whispering behind her hymn book. Their eyes darted my way, filled with a syrupy, insincere concern that felt more like judgment. "Are you okay, Mom?" Ethan whispered, noticing my white-knuckle grip on the program. I forced my fingers to relax. "I'm fine, buddy. Just fine." Later, in the fellowship hall over stale cookies, I overheard one of Eleanor's friends, Patricia. Mental issues since the divorce. Such a shame. She's turned on her entire family. I just pray for that little boy. I put my hand on Ethan's back and guided him toward the door. I didn't say a word. I just added it to the mental log. Another note for my documentation when we got home. "This is excellent documentation, Amelia." Dr. Wallace, my new therapist, tapped her pen against the spiral notebook I'd slid across her desk. Her silver-framed glasses caught the light. "Most people in your situation don't think to record the interactions with this level of detail." "I have to," I explained, my hands clasped in my lap. "Sometimes, after they call or post something, I start to doubt myself. I wonder if I am the monster. If I did overreact. The log, it keeps me sane. It's the truth." That's a common tactic in long-term family enmeshment, she said, her voice calm and validating. They've spent your entire life creating a narrative where you are the problem solver and the peacekeeper. When you suddenly refuse to play your part, the entire system destabilizes. They are escalating to force you back into your role. It feels awful, I whispered. It feels like you're setting boundaries for the first time, she countered gently. You are challenging a narrative that has been in place since your birth. How does that feel? I considered the question. Terrifying, but also lighter. Is that crazy? Not at all, Dr. Wallace said, a small smile on her face. It's the first sign of healing. The support started to appear in other unexpected places. Jessica, my coworker, met me for coffee. I gave her the carefully edited highlights focusing on the boundaries and the harassment. She just nodded, stirring her latte. Sounds to me like you're finally standing up for yourself, Amelia. It's about time. Anyone who files a false CPS report isn't family. They're an enemy. Period. Even Ethan's teacher, Ms. Peterson, stopped me during pickup. I don't know what's changed at home, Ms. Morgan, but whatever it is, keep it up. Ethan's confidence is through the roof. He's raising his hand in class. He's engaging with the other kids. He seems happier. That night, I joined the online meeting for the single-parent support group Dr. Wallace had recommended. I kept my camera off, just listening. But as I heard other women share stories of toxic in-laws, manipulative exes, and judgmental family, I found myself typing in the chat. My family is running a smear campaign because I cut them off financially. The responses were immediate. Been there. Screenshot everything. The first boundary is the hardest. You've got this. Among these strangers, I finally felt seen. Thursday evening, I was pushing a squeaky cart through Summit Grocers, Ethan beside me meticulously reading items from our shopping list. We need 2% milk, Mom. Not whole. Good eye, buddy. Grab it. We turned into the baking aisle, and my entire body tensed before my mind even registered why. Bianca. She was standing near the flour, her phone pressed to her ear. She spotted us instantly, her eyes narrowing. "I'll call you back," she said, her voice artificially loud, and snapped her phone shut. She stalked toward us, her cart blocking the aisle. Well, well, if it isn't the family destroyer. Ethan edged closer to me, his small hand gripping the side of my cart. I placed my arm around his shoulders, pulling him tight. "We're just grocery shopping, Bianca," I said, my voice low. "This isn't the time or the place." "Oh, there's no right place, is there?" Her voice rose, sharp and shrill, drawing the attention of an elderly couple nearby. "Not when you're too busy tearing a family apart over nothing." "It wasn't nothing," I said, keeping my voice steady and quiet. "You know exactly what it was." "I know that Mom is heartbroken," Bianca shouted. An employee stocking shelves nearby paused and glanced our way. "Dad barely speaks. He's so ashamed. All because you couldn't handle one simple dinner. All because you're so selfish." The word hung in the air. Selfish. The weapon they had used to keep me in line my entire life. "This isn't about dinner, Bianca," I said, my voice firm. "This is about respect. It's about you refusing to feed my son. It's about the money you've been taking from me for years. It's about the lies." "Respect?" She let out a brittle laugh. "You want to talk about respect? What about respecting the people who have always been there for you, who supported you through your divorce, who helped you when you had nothing?" The lie was so blatant, so audacious, it almost took my breath away. My mind flashed to the $7,200, the babysitting, the late-night calls, the empty ER waiting room when Ethan had pneumonia. "You will regret this," she hissed, leaning in close, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "You will regret choosing your stupid pride over your family. Family is everything, Amelia, and you just threw yours away." The old me would have dissolved. The old me would have apologized, right here in the baking aisle. The old me would have found some way to smooth it over, probably by offering to pay for her groceries. The new me just looked at her. "Excuse us," I said. I grabbed the handle of my cart, pushed it around her, and kept walking. "Really?" she shrieked at my back. "You're just walking away. Again, coward?" I kept moving. I didn't look back. Ethan's small hand found mine as we rounded the corner into the cereal aisle. "You did good, Mom," he whispered. I squeezed his hand, a sudden fierce wave of love and strength flooding my chest. "So did you, buddy. So did you." The following Wednesday, I was in the middle of a client presentation outlining our quarterly marketing strategy. My phone, set to Do Not Disturb, buzzed silently on the conference table. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. A third time. A cold dread seeped into my bones. Only a true emergency gets 3 calls. I held up a hand. "Excuse me, everyone, I need to take this." I snatched the phone and stepped into the hallway. The caller ID was Ethan's school. "Ms. Morgan." It was Principal Delaney, and her voice was strained. "Could you come in this afternoon? We have a situation that we need to discuss in person." The ice in my stomach became a frozen block. "Is Ethan okay? Is he hurt?" "He's fine, Ms. Morgan. He's safe in class. But we've received a very concerning report. It would be better to discuss this face to face." "I'm on my way." I walked back into the meeting, my face pale. "Family emergency. I have to go. Jessica, can you take over?" Jessica just nodded, her eyes wide with concern. "Go. We've got this." The 3-hour drive felt like 3 years. I parked illegally and ran into the building. The secretary ushered me straight into Principal Delaney's office. He wasn't alone. A woman in a professional suit sat beside his desk, a portfolio in her lap. My hands began to shake. "Ms. Morgan, this is Ms. Jacobs," the principal began, his face grim. "She's with Child Protective Services." The room tilted. I gripped the arms of the chair to stay upright. "CPS, why?" "Someone has filed an anonymous report claiming neglect," Ms. Jacobs said. Her tone was professional, not unkind, but it was clinical. "We are required by law to investigate every single report we receive." The fear that had initially flooded me began to curdle, hardening into something cold and sharp. Rage. This was Bianca's promised regret. "What kind of neglect?" I asked, my voice trembling but cold. Ms. Jacobs read from her file. "Allegations of inadequate food in the home, the child being left unsupervised for long hours after school, possible emotional neglect and an unstable home environment due to the mother's mental health." Each accusation was so clinically absurd, so perfectly designed to wound, it would have been laughable if it wasn't so serious. My mind was already cataloging the facts. The fridge I'd just stocked at Summit Grocers, Ethan's after-school program receipts, his glowing report card from Ms. Peterson. "When would you like to conduct your home visit?" I asked, my voice surprising me with its steadiness. Ms. Jacobs looked up, surprised by my directness. Most parents, she probably knew, were hysterical at this point. "I can be there tomorrow morning at 9 if that works for you." "Perfect," I said, standing up. "I'll see you then." That night, I did not panic. I did not cry. I channeled my cold fury into action. I cleaned our already tidy home until it gleamed. I went to the grocery store at 10 p.m. and bought so much fresh fruit, milk, and vegetables that our refrigerator looked like a commercial. I organized Ethan's schoolwork, his report cards, and his artwork into labeled folders on the dining room table. I printed out his medical records, showing every regular checkup and dental visit. Then I sat down and called Aunt Clara. "I need you to be a witness," I said, explaining the situation. "Bianca," Clara hissed, her voice vibrating with anger. "It has to be that little witch. We'll be there, Amelia. We'll be there at 8:30. At 9 a.m. sharp, Ms. Jacobs knocked on the door. I let her in. Aunt Clara and Uncle Robert were already there, sitting on my sofa like 2 silent, dignified pillars of support. "Ma'am, sir," Ms. Jacobs nodded, taking in the scene. "This is my aunt and uncle," I said. "They are a regular part of my son's life. They insisted on being here." For the next hour, Ms. Jacobs toured our home. She opened the refrigerator and the pantry, her pen making notes on her clipboard. She inspected Ethan's clean bedroom with his organized bookshelves and age-appropriate toys. She reviewed the folders on the table, the perfect attendance record from his after-school program, the report card full of A's, the glowing note from his teacher. She interviewed me. She interviewed Clara and Robert. Finally, she sat down at the dining table and let out a long sigh. She looked up at me, and her professional mask softened with what looked like genuine sympathy. "Ms. Morgan," she said, "I am closing this case. Effective immediately." The relief I'd been holding back made me grip the back of a chair. "This appears to be a retaliatory filing," she continued, her pen flying across a form. "What does that mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "It means someone likely filed this report to punish you, not out of any genuine concern for your son's welfare. Unfortunately, we see this often in acrimonious family disputes. It's a weapon." She tore off a copy of her report. "This is for your records. I am so sorry for the inconvenience and the stress this has caused you." After she left, Clara pulled me into a hug that threatened to crack a rib. "You handled that like a queen, Amelia." "It's not over," I said, my voice shaking now that the danger had passed. As soon as they left, I called Jessica. "I can't do lunch. Something came up." Then I made another call, an attorney, one recommended by a woman in my support group. "Hello, my name is Amelia Morgan," I said, twisting the phone cord. "I need to document harassment, and I need to know my options for a restraining order. My family just filed a false CPS report against me." "You've been incredibly thorough." Sandra Lang, my new attorney, looked up at me over her glasses. Her office was sleek, modern, and intimidating. My folder of evidence was spread across her mahogany desk. The Venmo transfers to Bianca, the rent receipts, the screenshots of the Facebook smear campaign, and now the crown jewel, the official closed as retaliatory CPS report. $7,200 in rent support in just 8 months, Sandra marveled, tapping her pen, plus the child care, which we can value at approximately $4,000 in services, and the $5,000 in unpaid loans. You have been bankrolling your sister's life. "I'm learning to be thorough," I said, my voice tight. "Excellent. I can draft cease and desist letters based on the clear pattern of harassment and the false CPS report." "That report is a serious escalation, Amelia. It's a legal weapon." She looked at me, her expression serious. "You understand, of course, that sending these letters will be the final nail in the coffin. This will effectively sever your relationship with them. There is no coming back from this." The question should have terrified me. Weeks ago, it would have sent me into a spiral of guilt. Now I felt only a cold, hard clarity. "They filed a false report with Child Protective Services. They tried to take my son." I met her gaze. "This isn't family drama anymore, Sandra. It's war." That evening, I was helping Ethan with his math homework when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost sent it to voicemail, but some instinct made me answer. "Hello?" "Amelia, it's David," Bianca's husband. My blood ran cold. I almost hung up. "Please don't hang up," he said quickly, his voice low and rushed. "Please, I'm not calling to argue." I'm not on her side. "Then why are you calling?" I said, my voice flat, neutral. I walked into the kitchen, away from Ethan. There was a heavy sigh on the other end. It was Bianca, the CPS report. She did it from a burner phone app, bragged about it. I told her she was insane, that she'd crossed a line. We had a massive fight. He paused. He sounded exhausted. "Look, check your Venmo in 5 minutes. I'm paying you back. My half, anyway, the rent money. I didn't know how much she was taking from you. I'm so sorry." "Why now, David? Why not all the other times?" "Because she tried to take your kid, Amelia." His voice was raw. You don't do that. This whole thing has gone too far. The screaming, the obsession. I think I'm done. I'm done enabling this. She's on her own now." My phone pinged, a Venmo notification. $3,600. The message attached was simple. I'm sorry. Another text followed from him. I mean it. I'm done. But listen, she's not. She and your parents, they're planning something else. They were talking about lawyers. Be careful, Amelia. He hung up. I stared at the Venmo notification. An unexpected ally. Or was this a trap? It felt like quicksand. Too unstable to trust, too dangerous to ignore. I didn't respond. I screenshotted the transaction, the text message, and the admission. I forwarded all of it to Sandra Lang. Documentation. Always documentation. David's warning echoed in my head for days. They're planning something else. They were talking about lawyers. It sent me into a spiral. My mind raced, connecting his warning to their past behavior. Lawyers. What did that mean? Were they going to sue me for slander? For the money Frederick claimed I owed him? My first thought was my job. It was the most vulnerable part of my life, the single thread holding me and Ethan above water. What if they called my boss? What if they resurrected the unstable narrative from the CPS report and tried to get me fired? I made a decision. I had to get ahead of it. I scheduled a meeting with my manager, Mark, under the guise of a personal update. I sat in his office, my hands sweating, and tried to explain. Mark, I'm going through a very difficult family separation, I started, my voice trembling. He looked concerned. Amelia, whatever you need, take some time. No, it's not that. They're very angry with me. They've already made some false allegations. I just want you to know, if you receive any strange calls about me, that it's not true. I'm fine. My work is my priority. He just stared at me, completely baffled. False allegations? Amelia, what's going on? I couldn't bring myself to say CPS. I fumbled. Just financial disagreements. It's ugly. I'm just trying to be transparent. The meeting ended awkwardly. I walked out feeling like I'd made things worse, not better. I'd painted myself as chaotic, as someone who brought drama to the workplace. I'd wasted my political capital at work on a threat that might not even exist. My paranoia didn't stop there. Bianca's hiss. You will regret this. Played in a loop, I started worrying about my car, about my apartment. I spent $200 I couldn't spare on a set of cheap, motion-activated security cameras and aimed them at my front door and my car in the driveway. I spent hours I should have been sleeping watching the grainy black and white footage, jumping at every passing shadow, every raccoon that skittered across the lawn. I was exhausted. My nerves were frayed. I was wasting time, money, and precious emotional energy. I was looking for a brick through my window, an angry call to my boss. I was preparing for the wrong attack. And that's exactly what they wanted. The weekend arrived. Blessedly quiet. Ethan was at a sleepover, his first one. The house was empty, and the silence, for the first time, felt like a burden. I decided to tackle the garage. It was a project I'd avoided since the divorce, a graveyard of old boxes and forgotten memories. I needed the physical labor. I needed to sweat, to move, to channel the storm of anxiety into something productive. Hours in, covered in dust and sweat, I was sorting through a stack of my old college textbooks. Tucked behind a heavy Marketing 101 binder was a shoebox. My name was written on the side in my mother's perfect looping cursive. A jolt went through me. This box had come from my childhood bedroom. I'd forgotten it existed. I carried it into the kitchen, wiping my hands on my jeans. I pulled off the lid, the scent of old paper and mildew rising to meet me. Inside was a time capsule of a girl I barely recognized. Old report cards, all A's, with teacher comments. Amelia is a quiet, helpful student, a pleasure to have in class. A blue ribbon from a 5th grade science fair. A handful of photos, a solemn-faced girl with braids, standing just outside the circle of her beaming mother and smiling younger sister. At the very bottom, there was a single yellowed envelope. My mother's stationery. It was addressed to my father. The date in the corner made my heart stutter. August 1st, 1988. 1 week after I was born. My fingers trembled. It was sealed. But after 35 years, the adhesive was weak. I slid my finger under the flap and it opened with a dry tearing sound. The letter inside was written on pale blue paper, creased and fragile. My mother's handwriting. Frank, it began. I wasn't ready for another baby, not so soon after Bianca. I'm trying, but I can't seem to bond with this one like I did with our first. When I look at Alexis, I just don't feel that same rush of love. Sometimes I wonder if there's something wrong with me, or if there's something wrong with her. She's so quiet, so watchful, nothing like our Bianca. What if this never changes? What if I never love her the same way? I had to sit down. My legs wouldn't hold me. At the bottom of the page, in my father's blocky, impatient handwriting, was a response, a note scribbled back to her. He'll grow out of it. Just favor Bianca until then. Less pressure on you that way. The paper slipped from my fingers. It landed silently on the kitchen counter. It wasn't my fault. It was never my imagination. It wasn't something I did wrong. It wasn't something I could have fixed by being quieter or smarter or more helpful. My entire life, my entire childhood, my constant desperate striving to be good enough, my role as the family ATM, my sister's blatant celebrated cruelty. It wasn't an accident. It was a plan, a documented, agreed-upon plan. Just favor Bianca. The ache that had lived in my chest for as long as I could remember didn't just transform, it evaporated. It was replaced by something else, a profound, hollow, overwhelming certainty. I picked up the letter. I picked up my phone. I didn't cry. I didn't even hesitate. I took a clear photograph of the letter and the note at the bottom, and I sent it, a group text, to Frederick, to Eleanor, to Bianca. No subject, no message, just the evidence. Then, for the second time, I blocked all 3 of their numbers. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I had them. I finally, truly had them. This wasn't just a receipt for $900. This was a receipt for my entire life. I immediately called Sandra Lang. It was a Saturday, but I didn't care. I left a frantic voicemail. Sandra, it's Amelia. I found it. I found the why. A letter from 1988. From my mother, with a note from my father. It's everything. It proves the favoritism. It proves the emotional neglect. It's the smoking gun. Call me back immediately. She called back within 10 minutes. Amelia, slow down. What did you find? I read her the letter, the line. Just favor Bianca until then. There was a long silence on the other end. My God, Sandra said, her professional calm completely gone. That's motive. That's a 35-year history of calculated emotional abuse. A lawyer would take one look at that and know what kind of people they're dealing with. What do I do? Do not send that picture to anyone else, Sandra commanded. Do not post it. Do not talk about it. That is evidence. The original letter. Where is it? On my kitchen counter. Put it in a waterproof bag. Put that bag in your briefcase or your purse. Do not let it out of your sight. Bring it to my office first thing Monday morning. We will make certified copies and file it with our other documentation. Amelia, this is a game changer. I did exactly as she said. I slid the fragile blue paper into a Ziploc bag and tucked it into the front pocket of my briefcase, right next to my laptop. I felt powerful. I had the truth written in their own hands. That night, I barely slept. I kept checking on the briefcase, which I'd left on the dining room table, ready to go. I felt the paranoia from the false lead creeping back in, but this time I had a reason. I had something to protect. I finally dozed off around 3 a.m. I was jolted awake by a sound, a sharp metallic pop from downstairs. My heart leaped into my throat. I sat up, my ears straining in the dark. Silence. Maybe I dreamed it. Then, crunch. The sound of glass breaking, but muffled, like it was inside a bag. Someone was in my house. I scrambled out of bed, my mind racing. Ethan wasn't home. Thank God Ethan wasn't home. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and crept to my bedroom door, locking it. I fumbled with the phone, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely type 911. 911, what's your emergency? Someone is in my house, I whispered. 214 Maple Drive. I'm upstairs in the bedroom. I heard glass break. Ma'am, stay on the line. A car is being dispatched. I could hear movement downstairs. Not a random burglary. Not someone grabbing electronics. It was focused. I heard the scrape of a chair on the kitchen floor. They were on the dining room, where my briefcase was. Oh God, David. They're planning something else. This was it. This was the real plan. The warning, the $3,600. It was all a setup, a distraction to make me trust him, to make me lower my guard right before they came for the one thing that could destroy them. I heard a zipper, my briefcase. I heard footsteps, fast, moving toward the back of the house, the sliding glass door to the backyard. Ma'am, are you there? The dispatcher's voice said. They're leaving, I whispered. They're going out the back. I waited, my body frozen, until I heard the distant wail of sirens. Only then did I creep out of my room. The house was cold. The back door, a sliding glass panel, was shattered. The thief hadn't just broken the lock, they'd smashed the pane closest to the handle and reached through. On the dining room table, my briefcase was wide open. My laptop was still there. My wallet was still in the side pocket, but the Ziploc bag with the blue letter was gone. It was gone. My deus ex machina was gone. They had it. They'd stolen it. I sank to my knees, the broken glass crunching under my feet. I wasn't just back at square one, I was worse. I'd had the winning hand, and they had just stolen it right out of my grasp. I called Sandra, my voice cracking with tears of rage. They took it, Sandra. They broke in and they stole the letter. It's gone. Amelia. Sandra's voice was grim when I told her what happened. We have to fight them with what we have. We have to fight them with nothing but your word and your records. The letter is gone. The police came. They took my statement, dusted for prints, and noted the professional nature of the break-in. No valuables taken, just one specific item. It sounds like you know who did this, Ms. Morgan, the officer said, his pen hovering over his notepad. I know, I said, but I can't prove it. The true attack, the one David's warning had been a diversion for, arrived 2 days later. It came via certified mail. I signed for the crisp, heavy envelope, my hand still shaking from the break-in. The return address was from one of the most expensive law firms in the city. I sliced it open. Notice of petition for grandparent visitation rights. My stomach dropped to the floor. I sank onto the kitchen chair, the thick legal paper rattling in my hands. Frederick and Eleanor. They were taking me to court. I scanned the formal, terrifying language. They were demanding court-ordered access to Ethan. The petition painted me as an emotionally unstable and vindictive mother who was cruelly severing a vital familial bond and withholding their grandson out of spite. It cited my increasingly erratic behavior, including abruptly severing family relationships without cause and making unfounded accusations. The theft of the letter suddenly made perfect, sickening sense. It wasn't just to destroy evidence against them, it was to remove the primary evidence for me. They had stolen my proof of their 35-year pattern of abuse, and now they were filing a suit that claimed I was the unstable one. For one terrible, paralyzing moment, fear gripped me. What if a judge believed them? What if my son, my sweet, gentle Ethan, was forced to spend weekends with the people who had deliberately and publicly humiliated him, the people who had tried to have him taken away by CPS? Then there was the money. The retainer for a firm like that was tens of thousands of dollars. They were trying to break me, morally, emotionally, and financially. I grabbed my phone and called Sandra. My voice was a choked whisper. They did it. They're suing me. They're suing for grandparent visitation rights. I was in Sandra's office an hour later. The petition crumpled in my fist. They stole the letter, Sandra. They stole my proof. Now they're filing this. They're going to win, aren't they? Sandra held up a hand. Breathe, Amelia. Sit. She took the petition from me, smoothing it out on her desk. She read it slowly, her expression hardening. This is aggressive, she said, and it's built on a foundation of lies. They're painting you as the aggressor. Because they have the letter, I cried. They have the one thing that proves they are the aggressors. The letter was motive, Sandra said, her voice sharp, cutting through my panic. We don't have it. We can't use it. So we're not going to talk about it ever again. Do you understand? I nodded, my throat tight. The letter was a lucky find, a deus ex machina. And you don't win these fights with luck. You win them with facts. And you, Amelia, have been building the real case for months. You just didn't know it. She stood up and went to a whiteboard in her office. She uncapped a marker. 1. We have the bank statements. She wrote financial exploitation on the board. We have $7,200 in documented, non-repaid rent transfers. A judge will see this as a clear pattern of financial abuse. 2. We have the official, closed as retaliatory CPS report. She underlined retaliatory CPS report twice. This is our silver bullet, Amelia. This is 10 times better than that letter. This is a state agency on the record, calling their actions punitive. A family court judge will be horrified by this. 3. We have the Venmo admission from David. She wrote David's admission. He admits Bianca filed the report. He admits to the money. He is a hostile witness against his own wife. 4. We have sworn affidavits from your Aunt Clara and Uncle Robert. She wrote, witnesses. Testifying to the decades-long pattern of favoritism and the confrontation at your home. 5. We have the log. She wrote, harassment log. Every screenshot of the smear campaign, every harassing text, every call from Cousin Bella. It shows a coordinated effort to intimidate you. She capped the marker and turned to me. Her eyes were fierce. They think they stole your weapon. They have no idea that you've built an entire arsenal. The letter was just a distraction. This is the case. We are not just going to defend. We are going to attack. We will file a blistering formal response, and we will attach every single one of these exhibits. We will bury them in their own filth. For the first time in days, I took a deep breath. She was right. I had done the work. I had earned this. Okay, I said, my voice steady again. Let's bury them. We spent the next 2 days building the fortress. Sandra's paralegal helped me organize my bank statements into a devastating financial timeline. I sat with Aunt Clara and Uncle Robert as they gave their formal, notarized affidavits to Sandra, their words precise and damning. Sandra herself drafted our formal response. It was not a defense. It was a counterstrike. It methodically dismantled every claim in their petition. Unstable? We attached the glowing note from Ethan's teacher and the CPS worker's report praising my home. Vindictive. We attached the $1,200 in financial records proving my generosity in the face of their exploitation. Severing a vital bond. We attached Ethan's school records, showing not a single visit, pickup, or attended event by Frederick or Eleanor in 3 years. And then, the final blow. We attached the CPS report, the text from David admitting Bianca filed it, and the police report from the break-in, suggesting a clear, malicious, and criminal pattern of harassment. Sandra filed it with the court and served it to their high-priced lawyer. The wait was agonizing. 24 hours. 48. My phone rang on Thursday afternoon. It was Sandra. I picked it up so fast I almost dropped it. Amelia? Yes? I just got off the phone with opposing counsel, the high-priced lawyer from Scottsdale. I held my breath. He's advising his clients to drop the petition immediately. What? Why? He said, and I quote, "I was hired to file a simple visitation request, not to defend my clients against allegations of financial exploitation, perjury, and conspiracy to file a false report with CPS." I sank into my chair, the relief so total it left me weak. "He saw the CPS report, Amelia," Sandra continued, a note of triumph in her voice. "He saw the Venmo from David. He knew instantly that if this ever saw the inside of a courtroom, his clients would not only be humiliated, they would likely be sanctioned by the judge and possibly investigated for filing a false report. So, it's over? He's filing the motion to dismiss as we speak. They're running. They're terrified. You didn't just win, Amelia. You annihilated them. And you did it without the letter. You did it with your own diligence. You did it yourself." I hung up the phone and just sat there in the quiet of my kitchen. I had won. I had protected my son. I had used their own tactics against them, but with the one thing they never bothered to acquire: the truth. The victory was sweet, but I wasn't naive. I hadn't just won a battle. I had won the war. And the first rule of winning a war is to secure the borders. The very next morning, I was not at work. I was at my estate attorney's office, a different lawyer, one who specialized in wills and trusts. "I need to update my will," I said, my voice firm, "effective immediately. In the event of my death, I need to legally designate guardians for my son, Ethan." "Of course," he said, pulling up my file. "Your parents, I assume?" "No," I said, my voice cold. "Under no circumstances are Frederick or Eleanor Morgan, or my sister, Bianca Morgan, to have custody of my son. I want it explicitly stated that they are to have no contact." His eyebrows shot up. "I am naming my aunt and uncle, Clara and Robert Peterson, as Ethan's sole legal guardians. They have already agreed." I spent the next hour signing documents that felt like armor, a layer of protection for my son that would extend beyond my own life. From the lawyer's office, I drove directly to Ethan's school. I walked into the front office and asked for Principal Delaney. "Ms. Morgan," he said, smiling. "Good to see you. Is everything all right?" "Everything is being resolved," I said. "I'm here to file a restricted access order for Ethan." His smile faded. "I see. I need a formal list of approved individuals for pickup or visits. No one else is permitted on the property to see him. No exceptions." I slid a piece of paper across his desk. On it were 3 names: Amelia Morgan, Clara Peterson, Robert Peterson. "What about his grandparents?" the principal asked gently. "Frederick and Elaine Morgan are to be permanently barred from this property," I said, "as is my sister, Bianca Morgan. If they attempt to pick him up or contact him, you are to call me and then call the police, in that order." He looked at the names, then at my face. He saw the resolution there. He saw the end of the fight. "Of course, Ms. Morgan," he said, nodding. "I'll update his file right now." I went home and sat at my dining room table. I pulled out a single sheet of my best stationery. I wasn't just building legal walls. I was building a personal one. A final one. I wrote one letter. "I have documented every instance of neglect, manipulation, financial exploitation, and cruelty toward myself and my son. This file includes all financial records, communications, and the official CPS report labeling your actions as retaliatory. I have shared this complete documentation with my attorneys and with trusted third parties, with legal instructions to make it public in the event of my death or incapacitation. If you or any agent acting on your behalf ever contact me or my son again, in any form, I will not hesitate. I will involve law enforcement for harassment, and I will release the entire file. This is not a negotiation. This is not a temporary boundary. This is permanent. We are finished. Do not contact us again." I made 3 copies. I addressed 3 envelopes, one to Frederick, one to Eleanor, one to Bianca. I drove to the post office and sent all 3 via certified mail with return receipt requested. A permanent checkmate. That evening, I gathered every single framed photograph in my house that contained their faces, holidays, birthdays, forced family vacations where I looked miserable and Bianca looked triumphant. I emptied the frames, one by one. I fed each glossy, smiling picture into the small office shredder I owned. I watched as their faces disappeared, turning into meaningless confetti. The shredder whined, protesting the work, but I didn't stop until the box was full and my walls were bare. I went to the store that night, not for groceries, but for picture frames. Simple, clean, black ones. I spent the rest of the evening creating a new photo wall. A real one. There was Ethan in me, squinting and laughing at the Grand Canyon last year. There was Aunt Clara and Uncle Robert teaching Ethan how to fish at the lake, all three of them tangled in fishing line. There was a picture of me and Jessica from work, our arms around each other at the company picnic. I even printed a photo of my single-parent support group from our last potluck, my chosen family, the people who showed up, the people who saw me and who saw my son. As I was hanging the last frame, my phone pinged, a new text message from Eleanor. My heart hammered. She must have gotten the letter. She was blocked, but the message had come through as an iMessage, a last gasp from a blocked number. My finger hovered over the bubble. The old Amelia was screaming at me to open it, to read the justification, the apology, the final desperate threat. The old Amelia needed to know. I took a deep breath. I looked at the new wall of photos, at Ethan's smiling face, at Clara's. I pressed my thumb down on the message, not to open it, to delete it. I deleted the entire thread, unread. Some messages don't deserve to be read. Some chapters need to stay firmly, permanently closed. I walked into Ethan's room. He was asleep, his face relaxed and peaceful. I stroked his hair, and my heart felt quiet. Not broken, not angry, just quiet and full. 3 months later, the tent stakes slid into the rusty earth of Sierra pines with a satisfying thud. I hammered the last one in and stood up, stretching my back and breathing in the sharp, clean scent of pine. The magnificent red rock formations of the park towered around us, catching the late afternoon sun like ancient sentinels on fire. "Mom, look at this one. It's bigger than my hand." Ethan darted out from between two juniper trees, his laughter bouncing off the canyon walls. He held up a perfectly formed, massive pine cone, his eyes bright with discovery. There were no phones chirping with accusations, no suffocating family drama, just the vast open sky, the clean air, and my son's voice stronger and more confident than I had ever heard it. "That's perfect for our collection, buddy," I called back, smiling as he carefully placed it on our picnic table. He chattered as we finished setting up camp, telling me all about rock formations and desert wildlife, facts he'd clearly memorized from a book he'd checked out of the school library. The quiet, hesitant boy from the Chestnut Hill Grove was gone. In his place was this curious, funny, brilliant explorer who now spoke without first checking to see if anyone wanted to hear his thoughts. Later, as the stars punched through the deep purple sky, we sat by the fire, roasting marshmallows. Our simple camp dinner felt more luxurious than any $600 meal. Ethan was completely absorbed in rotating his marshmallow, his face glowing in the firelight, determined to get the perfect golden brown. When he looked up, chocolate smeared across his chin, his expression turned serious. "You seem happier, Mom." The words hit me with a gentle, unexpected force. This observant child. He always saw everything. I exhaled, watching the flames dance. "I am, buddy. I really am." The guilt that had shadowed my every decision for decades was just gone, replaced by a quiet, confident self-advocacy. I'd received a promotion at work last month, the promotion I'd finally had the energy to fight for. My therapy sessions with Dr. Wallace had helped me process the grief without drowning in it, and my relationship with Clara and Robert had deepened into the realest family I'd ever known. My life was no longer about surviving. It was about living. Ethan reached over and took my hand, his own sticky with marshmallow. "Mom?" "Yeah, buddy." He squinted into the fire, thinking. I like our family better now. I squeezed his small hand, my heart so full I thought it might burst. The simple, profound truth of his words settled between us, as vast and as peaceful as the starry sky above. "Me too," I whispered. "Me too." If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.